Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Everyman's Odyssey podcast, where we explore the challenges and values of authentic living through sharing stories and ideas. I'm your host and founder of the podcast, Cole McClure. So, the inspiration for today's episode came from a quote that I came across the other day. C.S. Lewis said, "Hardship often prepares an ordinary person for an extraordinary destiny." And as those words kind of repeated in my head over the next few days, I started to wonder what made him come to that conclusion. And I started to think about the role that hardship plays in our destiny, as he put it. And as I was thinking about the role that hardship plays in our lives, it reminded me of something. And it might sound a little crazy, but when I was in high school, I was insecure about a lot of things, but one of the things that I was insecure about was the honest fact that I had had a pretty comfortable, fortunate, and sheltered childhood. I would see people and hear stories of these individuals who had overcome such great adversity and became so inspirational to so many people. And I started to think, how am I going to inspire anybody? How am I going to be useful to somebody? How am I going to help somebody? I haven't gone through anything. And I used to honestly pray that God would make me useful. And knowing that requires, suffering and hardship, because I'd seen examples of it, but I just wanted so bad to be able to help people and to be useful to other people that I would be insecure about the fact that I hadn't suffered. I didn't have this great struggle. I had a very healthy upbringing, a good home, good parents. I didn't have a lot to claim that I had gone through. Be careful what you wish for. God, in his absolutely infinite wisdom, decided to answer that prayer exactly as I had requested. But it was a good reminder that your ability to affect and help others can be directly related to your own ability to go through, overcome, and learn from your own struggles. So, I wanted to spend some time talking about hardship. First, why do we endure hardship? Why do bad things happen? Why do we go through these things? And then, how do we get through it? How do we actually endure these things and come on the other side? And then, at the end, how do we use that? How can our hardships become the catalyst for our greatest achievements, our greatest personal growth, and our greatest value and asset in our own lives and in the lives of the people around us? So there is this possibility, maybe, to lead a easier or more comfortable life, but have a more ordinary and less impactful life. You don't get to have easiness and greatness. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how we make use of almost guaranteed struggles in our lives. So like I said, let's start with why do we go through hard things? And we'll get to the purpose, but let's start with the cause. And let's start with what isn't the cause. God does not cause your suffering. I hear a lot of times, and of course in my own life I've asked the same question, why do bad things happen to good people? Why does God allow this tragedy, or why did God cause this suffering? And I think it's a skewed perception, and it's just not the truth. God can certainly take tragedy and suffering and bring value to it and use it to make something beautiful. But his ability to bring something good out of something bad doesn't necessarily implicate his responsibility or his direct hand in the bad thing. God has given us free will, and that means that man is free to make choices, good and bad, and that includes us in our own lives. A lot of times there are outside forces that have an impact on our lives that we can't control, that can have terrible results. But just as often, if not more so, it's actually our own choices that are having a negative impact on our lives. So I think it's important to remember the reason for our suffering isn't the mystery of an all-powerful God who will push suffering upon us. It's our own selves and the people that we are surrounded by, the people far away, the people have, been in the past. Man's free will wreak havoc on everyone's lives, and that is just part of being human. We have the ability to make great choices and find great love and passion and purpose. But in order to be free to do wonderful things, freedom also leaves us open to do terrible things. So that's a big part of the why, is that cause, and recognizing that if you're going to place blame, it's important to start pretty close to home. The next thing would be the purpose. What is the purpose for suffering? Because there has to be something. There has to be a purpose. And so there is actually a scripture that I wanted to read, and it's James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. And it says, "Consider it all joy, my brothers and sisters, when you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And let endurance have its perfect result, so that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing." And I think that's a pretty important purpose right there. If you want to look at the why am I going to go through this difficult thing? Why is this situation being thrust upon me? It's so that you can overcome it, and you will learn from it. And every struggle that you go through, and every time you overcome, you are perfecting your mind. You are gaining wisdom. You are gaining knowledge that you didn't have before. So you will go through trials, and you will go through hardships and suffering. And a purpose that you can find is what you're gaining from it, so that you will be mature and complete and lack nothing. And again, that goes back to being able to be useful. Like, why are we going to go through these things? So that when somebody else goes through something, you're there to coach them, to guide them, or if nothing else, to sympathize with them, because everybody needs somebody who understands what they're going through. And so when you're suffering, you want to have someone by your side who understands. And that means that someday you're going to have the opportunity to be that person to understand somebody else's suffering. And that's important too. And so when C.S. Lewis is saying hardship often prepares an ordinary person for an extraordinary destiny, he's saying that the greatness of your future is directly related to and built upon the sacrifices and the struggles of your past. They are not separate, they are connected. And you can see how much you're struggling now and take hope in that, in understanding the potential for your future growing as you endure more and more hardships. And so there's another book that kind of relates to why we go through some of these things and why we're suffering and why we experience hard times. And it's a book by James Allen, which is called As a Man Thinketh, which is based off of another scripture, Proverbs 23:7, as a man thinketh, so he is. And that is the premise of this whole book, is that you have such a strong influence on your circumstances and on your outlook on life just based on how you focus your thoughts. And so I'd like to read just a little bit here from this book. And it says, "The outer conditions of a person's life will always be found to be harmoniously related to his inner state. This does not mean that a man's circumstances at any given time are an indication of his entire character, but that those circumstances are so intimately connected with some vital thought element within himself that for the time being, they are indispensable to his development." And I'll be honest, I had to read that a couple times to really understand what he was saying. But I think what he's getting at is that you do have the power to create your environment. So when you find yourself in a situation you didn't want to be in, or in a hardship, not that it necessarily always reflects poorly on your character, but that there is something within your character that is being developed, that the situation that you find yourself in is absolutely pivotal in creating that progress. So I think another reason why we go through these hardships is to learn these lessons. So it's important to see the situation as an opportunity and find why. Like, what is it about me that I need to learn that is being presented in this situation? So now that we've talked a little bit about, the cause of our suffering and perhaps the purpose of our suffering, let's talk about how do we actually get through that? How do we succeed at overcoming hardship and coming out on the other side so that we can make use of it? And so this is actually something that we've talked about, in a recent video that I put out. And the first thing is to remember your why. Remember why you're doing the things that you're doing. You need to figure out a goal in life, and maybe it's not this huge overarching thing. Maybe it's a specific task or a skill that you're working on, but you need to define your reasons and your motivations, and you need to know that. Seneca said, "If a man knows not what port he sails, no wind is favorable." So what he's saying is everything is a struggle. Nothing is going the right way. If you don't have a way, if you don't have a why, if you don't know where you're going, it all seems like a struggle. So knowing why you're on the course that you're on and what your ultimate goal is an important piece to staying on track and staying motivated and having the ability to overcome something, because you have to keep in mind what's on the other side. So you have to figure out, what is it that I'm striving for on the other side of this struggle? And so there's another scripture here that I'd like to read, and it's 1 Corinthians chapter 9, and we'll start in verse 24. And it says, "Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one receives the prize? So run that you may obtain it." And that's speaking to, again, remember why. Like, everybody struggles. Everybody runs. All these athletes, everybody in life is headed towards something. So participate like you want to win. Remember why you're doing this. Remember what your goal is, and get after it like you're going to get there. I think another helpful thing that I've been thinking about is kind of like this mental exercise in recognizing the successes of your past hardships. So I think you should challenge yourself to think of a good thing that came out of a previous struggle. What's something that you went through recently that absolutely sucked, and find one thing about it that you're grateful for, that maybe would have never happened had you not been through that hardship. And then apply that same mental exercise to your current hardships. Whatever you're going through right now, just try to imagine one good thing that could come from it. And if you can do that, that kind of takes the sting out of some of it. Yeah, it still sucks. Yeah, you're still suffering through it and you're not over it yet, but you have a vision of what could be built upon that struggle. And that's super helpful, at least for me. Another thing, and I almost hate to say it because it sounds so cliche, uh, everybody's heard this, that attitude is everything. And so when I thought about this idea of your attitude during your struggle and your perspective, I was trying to think of a real world example. And when I was in the Army training in Virginia, our job training, our class would go in the afternoon and we would be done with school. We'd get back to the barracks around 2 o'clock in the morning. And at that point, everybody's miserable. Everybody's tired. We know that some people, you still have guard duty. You still have all this stuff to take care of before you wake up in 6 hours. So everybody's on edge and fighting and yelling at each other. And then every once in a while, when we're standing there in formation before we're allowed to go to bed, Sergeant Fisher would jump out. He exits the building and immediately everything changes. Everybody's attitude changes because Sergeant Fisher is here to have a good time. And so at 2 o'clock in the morning, all those guys who were ready to tear each other apart because we're so tired and so frustrated, now everybody is absolutely ecstatic about the idea of spending the next hour screaming at the top of our lungs, working out and going for a run because Sergeant Fisher wants to have a good time. So he'll come out at 2 o'clock in the morning. Maybe it's hot and you're sweating. Maybe it's freezing cold and it's raining, but he's going to come out and scream at everybody, "Nice weather we're having, Hua." And everybody's going to scream right back that it is nice weather and it's a good time to go for a run. And I think about that a lot. And you should have that voice internally, just your own personal Sergeant Fisher in your head, who it doesn't matter what time it is, doesn't matter how tired you are, doesn't matter what you're going through. Somebody's here to make a good time out of it. And an important part of that is not only having that within yourself, but surrounding yourself with the people who have the ability to see the terrible things and acknowledge them, but just drive on and have a good time. And so that is just an example of somebody who had the ability to change your perspective. And it was so easy. There was no complicated process. It was just one person's perspective, one person's personality commanding the situation. Nothing changes. You're still tired. You still haven't slept. You still haven't eaten. You still have all these things to do. But it's just a fresh perspective that changed everything. And that's important to have somebody who can give you that fresh perspective, and recognizing that when you are going through hardships, that you're not alone. Nobody has to be alone. There's a quote from Marcus Aurelius in Meditations that says, "Don't be ashamed to need help. Like a soldier storming a wall, you have a mission to accomplish. And if you've been wounded and need a comrade to pull you up, so what? That's what they're there for." Don't be embarrassed to be going through hard things, because everybody goes through hard things at some point. Don't be ashamed to ask for help. Take advantage of that and let that opportunity of someone helping you bring you two closer together. Let it empower your relationship. Let it build your own confidence while also instilling you with some humility. Take advantage of these opportunities and let other people be a part of your journey. And lastly, how do we take those things and understand, why we're suffering, gain the skills to actually go through it and come out on the other side? But even that doesn't build resilience. That doesn't make you more resistant to future struggles, just the fact that you've struggled previously. So resilience is the ability to withstand or recover quickly from difficult conditions. And the only way that you're going to achieve that is, yes, suffering and going through hardships, but you have to combine that with a learned skill of assigning value to your suffering. You don't assign regret, you don't assign contempt, and you don't block it out of your memory. You need to recognize your suffering and place value on it. Be grateful for it even. And I've been surrounded by books and scriptures and notes through this whole process because it's an intimidating thing to tell people to be grateful for suffering. Like I said, I've been through my own share of struggles at this point, but even those, pale in comparison to others, if you wanted to look at it that way. So to tell people to be joyful for these opportunities to suffer is a hard thing to do. So I wanted to give a couple examples of how you assign value to your suffering. In 2008, while I was still on active duty, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. And it was a horrifically painful and embarrassing process to get that diagnosis and to find a treatment that would give me something resembling healthy. And it was terrible. I hated it. And I was mad. And I asked God why. And I had all these questions and dissatisfactions and thought that it wasn't fair to go through the things that I was going through. And then my sister started to experience something similar. She was suffering and she was struggling and she was angry, and immediately I just thanked God that I had gone through the things that I had gone through. I am so grateful for the suffering and the experience of going through that diagnosis and living with the treatment options and the changes that it causes in your life, because nothing is more valuable than being able to help the people that you love. And so now the fact that my sister is going through this similar thing that I have had to go through, it breaks my heart that she's having to suffer. It breaks my heart that she's experiencing what I know is so awful. But I was so grateful that I could actually be a voice that could connect with her, and that she could know that there was somebody who understands, and that I was able to be there for her. It was immediately worth every bit of it. And so placing that value, if I could wave a magic wand and be rid of Crohn's and the whole experience be erased from my memory, I wouldn't do it. So you have to assign value to your suffering, which means you have to find a way to use it. That's the only way that it's going to be worth anything, is you have to find a way to use it. And another example, I've struggled a lot with insecurities about my employment history. I was not in the military as long as I had thought or had wanted. And since then, I've had multiple jobs, gone through flight school, and put myself on different career paths multiple times that just don't work out. I've done so many different jobs that it starts to look bad. You're going for an interview and it looks like I just bounce around and I can't decide what I want out of life. And maybe I don't fit in anywhere because I can't seem to hold anything down. I can't seem to find a place where I fit in. So where do I fit in? And that was a really hard thing to do. And then going through a work injury at a place that I thought I was going to stay long term. And so it's been years and years of this continued hardship. And now I'm starting to learn to place value on that as well. And now I'm not saying that the job that I'm in right now is where I'm going to be forever. I love the job that I'm in now. Maybe it'll be a long-term thing. Maybe God will move me on somewhere else. But the value is how versatile my experience has been in helping other people, how many people I can relate to because I've done so many different things. I've been to so many different places and I've struggled with so many different things and different jobs and talking to different types of people in different parts of their lives, whether it's, driving people to the hospital because they're getting cancer treatment, or filing someone's disability claim with the VA because they had this terrible injury or experience in the military, or working for, a police department, contacting homeless individuals and trying to bring them hope. I've done a lot of different things, and that used to be embarrassing, but now I'm starting to assign the value because I'm putting it to use. There's so many different situations that I feel prepared for because I've been in a similar situation before. So none of those things are failures anymore. They're all tools that I'm using now. And so I am extremely grateful for all the things that I thought I was failing at, for not sticking with long term for whatever the reason. Now, regardless of how long I'm in any given position, I am using every previous experience to enhance my ability to help others in my current job. And so that's a huge win. And I'm very grateful for that. And being able to think about the things that you've been through and find ways to apply them, not just for yourself, but for others, that's how you assign value. And combining that value with your suffering is how you build resilience. That's what makes it easier to go through your next hardship. That's what makes all future hardships less hard, because you understand the process and the end result. So, to recap, when it comes to building resilience and getting through things in an effective and useful way, you have to figure out what you want out of life. If you want this extraordinary destiny, as C.S. Lewis put it, you need to accept that you will go through some extraordinary circumstances, and not all of them positive. Great struggle begets great success. And it's a good thing. And it just inherently adds value to the success that you do have. But you have to figure out what it is you want. What is that great thing? You need to aim high, aim for greatness, so that when you're struggling, you see what's on the other side. You see what you're aiming at, and you keep that in mind, and you keep that motivation through the struggle. The next thing you need to do once you find yourself in the middle of that hardship is identify the lesson. Analyze it and look at what you're going through from the perspective of knowing that there's something valuable in that season of your life. And the sooner you can identify what that is, the sooner you can learn the lesson that is guaranteed to be in there somewhere, the sooner you're going to come through it and be able to use it on the other side. And part of coming through that, like we've talked about, is adjusting your perspective. Having that inner Sergeant Fisher to come out and tell you that you're going to have a good day today, regardless of what you've been going through. And also having people in your life who can pick you up and carry you when you need it. Because while you're building this resilience, nobody's perfected resilience. There's always going to be a point in somebody's life where they need somebody alongside them. So accept that and find those people in your life who are going to be the ones to pick you up and carry you when you need that. And lastly, make your suffering useful. Apply it to yourself and to others, and find a way that your hardships improve somebody else's life. And it's great to learn your own lessons and be able to apply it to your next hardship, but the most value that you're going to get out of your own suffering is finding a way to use it to either lessen somebody else's suffering or be that person who's helping others because you've been through that as well. So assign value by finding a place for it. Find a use for all the things that you've learned and everything that you've been through. Find a way to empower other people with that. So like I said, this was a pretty intimidating topic for me, and I certainly ended up learning a lot and reflecting a lot about my own life, and slowing the process down, because I absolutely want to be sure that this is adding value. So I hope there's something in here that is helpful for you. And if you're struggling right now, if you're going through a hardship, go through this process. Like I said, figure out what it is you want, identify the lesson, adjust your perspective, and add value by finding a use for your hardship. So thank you so much for tuning in, guys. I really appreciate it. I'm enjoying this process, and I love watching as the podcast is growing. Please feel free to reach out on social media if you have any comments or questions or feedback. Please let me know. But thanks for tuning in. Take care, guys.